We all know that movies can be great sources of entertainment, but what happens when Hollywood takes liberties with the facts? And when we use the term liberties, we are talking about completely fabricating information. From historical inaccuracies to scientific blunders, it turns out that some of our favorite films have been playing fast and loose with the truth. Today, we're hitting up the top 10 movies that have completely messed with the facts. Here's a tantalizing trivia tidbit for you. Which of these movies is infamous for drastically altering its historical protagonist's personality? A. The Imitation Game 2014, B. A Beautiful Mind 2001, C. Gladiator 2000. Feeling confident and can't resist showing off a little? Dish up your guess in the comments before sneakily peeping at the answer tucked away in the description. Let's kick things off with our number 10 pick, The Patriot 2000. This Roland Emmerich-directed film starring Mel Gibson gave us some stirring scenes of Revolutionary War heroism. Now let's not sugarcoat it. As exciting as it was, the film was more fiction than fact. One glaring inaccuracy is the portrayal of British soldiers as ruthless, civilian-murdering monsters. In reality, the British Army was a professional force that, while no doubt on the opposing side, didn't typically engage in the wanton violence the film depicts. Also, the film's hero, Benjamin Martin, is a composite character of several real-life figures, but the blending of these figures into one character led to some serious historical distortions, including the fact that one of the people he's based on, Francis Marion, was actually a slave owner. So as much as we love a good Gibson rallying cry, The Patriot fumbles the fact ball quite a bit. Alright, let's march on from the Revolutionary War to the hallowed halls of Princeton University with our number 9 pick, A Beautiful Mind, 2001. This Oscar-winning biopic tells the moving story of John Nash, a brilliant mathematician who struggled with schizophrenia. While Russell Crowe's portrayal of Nash is commendable, the movie strays far from the truth in several instances. For starters, Nash's hallucinations were largely auditory, not the visual hallucinations dramatized in the movie. Moreover, the film conveniently skips over some of the more controversial aspects of Nash's life, such as his sexual relationships with men and his neglect of a child from a previous relationship. Also, the movie depicts Nash's wife, Alicia, as tirelessly supportive throughout his struggle with mental illness. The reality? They divorced in 1963, only to remarry 38 years later. So while A Beautiful Mind paints a poignant picture, it certainly takes some, shall we say, artistic liberties with the truth. Moving on from schizophrenic mathematicians to code-breaking geniuses, let's uncover the truth behind our number 8 choice, The Imitation Game 2014. This critically acclaimed film recounts the story of Alan Turing and his team at Bletchley Park during World War II. While Benedict Cumberbatch's performance as Turing is captivating, the movie takes some serious liberties with historical facts. Let's begin with the big one. In the film, Turing and his team personally cracked the Enigma code. But in reality, the Polish Cipher Bureau was the first to break Enigma, with Turing and his team later developing more sophisticated methods to keep up with the ever-evolving code. Also, the movie suggests that Turing named his decoding machine Christopher, after his childhood friend, when in reality it was called the Bomba. The film also inaccurately portrays Turing as a socially awkward loner, while colleagues described him as witty and humorous in real life. Lastly, the film implies that Turing was under investigation during the war due to his homosexuality, but his arrest didn't actually take place until several years later. Despite its dramatic storytelling, The Imitation Game falls short in its adherence to historical facts. Please welcome our number 7 pick, Argo, 2012. This Oscar-winning film, directed by Ben Affleck, is a tense retelling of the Canadian caper during the 1979 Iran hostage crisis. Now, don't get me wrong, Argo is an edge-of-your-seat thriller, but when it comes to factual accuracy, well, let's just say it's got some splaining to do. Here's the thing, while the film depicts the American CIA as the main saviors, our friendly neighbors in the North, the Canadians, actually played a far more significant role in the rescue mission than the movie gives them credit for. The former Canadian ambassador to Iran, Ken Taylor, called the film a complete distortion of reality. Furthermore, the climactic airport chase sequence, yeah, that never happened. In reality, the hostages boarded their flight without the dramatic last-minute hitches the movie shows. So while Argo keeps us glued to our seats, it certainly takes some creative detours from the historical roadmap. Swapping the cloak and dagger intrigue of international espionage for the roar of the Roman crowds and clanging of swords, we're heading back to ancient times with our number 6 pick, Gladiator 2000. Directed by Ridley Scott and featuring a beefy, vengeance-seeking Russell Crowe, this film was praised for its captivating storytelling and intense action sequences. However, when it comes to historical accuracy, Gladiator is more like a heavily romanticized, fictional tale wrapped in a toga. Let's untangle some of the glaring factual inaccuracies. To start, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, portrayed as a benevolent father figure, actually died of natural causes, and did not appoint Maximus as his successor as depicted in the film. And Commodus, far from the sniveling villain Joaquin Phoenix effectively portrays, was not a tyrant, but a fairly effective, if not eccentric ruler who reigned for a full 12 years. Not a brief few months as suggested by the movie. Furthermore, the film's depiction of gladiatorial contest is largely exaggerated for dramatic effect. Fights to the death were the exception, not the rule, as gladiators were expensive to train and maintain. So, while Gladiator might have had us cheering in the cinema, it's clear that it was playing in the Colosseum of fiction rather than the arena of fact. With the Colosseum dust still settling, we now set sail across the Atlantic to the New World. Brace yourselves as we dive into our number 5 pick, Pocahontas, 1995. This Disney classic has been charming audiences for years with its tale of cross-cultural love and understanding. But when it comes to historical accuracy, Pocahontas is about as accurate as a broken compass. Let's start with the big one, the age of Pocahontas. In the movie, she's portrayed as a young woman when she meets John Smith, but in reality, she was only about 10 or 11 years old. And that romantic relationship between Pocahontas and John Smith? Historians have largely debunked it. In fact, Pocahontas later married John Rolfe, not Smith, and had a child with him. Furthermore, the film paints a largely idyllic picture of native life and the arrival of the English settlers, ignoring many of the violent conflicts and diseases that devastated native populations. So while Pocahontas may be a colorful and heartwarming animated film, it navigates pretty far off the map of historical truth. Let's hop on our metaphorical time machine and step out in 480 BC, smack in the middle of the Battle of Thermopylae. That's right, folks. Brace yourselves for our number 4 pick, the visually spectacular yet historically askew 300, 2006. Now, we all love a good underdog story, and this film certainly delivers one with its depiction of the 300 brave Spartans standing against the mighty Persian army. However, Leonidas' band of brothers might feel a little shortchanged by this cinematic interpretation. Despite what the film would have us believe, the Spartans were not alone in their stand against the Persians. They were actually part of a larger Greek force of about 7,000 soldiers, a small fact the film conveniently overlooks. Furthermore, the villainous Xerxes, while indeed a historical figure, probably didn't stand at 9 feet tall as Rodrigo Santoro's CGI-enhanced version does in the film. And let's not even get started on the monstrous beasts and fantastical creatures depicted in the Persian army. While they make for thrilling adversaries, they're about as historically accurate as a unicorn in the Kentucky Derby. So while 300 is a feast for the eyes and a thrilling tale of camaraderie and courage, it's best to leave your history textbooks at the door. Leaving behind the mythical beasts and hyperbolized heroes of ancient Sparta, we're about to embark on a journey back to a painful chapter of American history. Because our number 3 pick is taking us to the skies of Pearl Harbor, 2001. This Michael Bay-directed film aimed to bring the infamous 1941 attack to life, blending a tumultuous love triangle with the earth-shaking events of December 7th. However, while the visual spectacle was breathtaking, the film's commitment to accuracy was less so. For starters, the film portrays the Japanese attack as a complete surprise. In reality, tensions between the US and Japan had been escalating for some time, and while the scale and exact timing of the attack were unexpected, the possibility of a military clash was not. Secondly, the love triangle at the center of the movie, involving 2 fighter pilots and a nurse, is purely fictional, and no records indicate that there was ever a Danny or Rafe. Even more erroneous is the depiction of American pilots taking part in an airfield attack on Tokyo shortly after the Pearl Harbor attack. In actuality, the Doolittle Raid, as it was known, didn't occur until April 1942, months after Pearl Harbor. So while Pearl Harbor delivers an epic emotional roller coaster, its historical accuracy sinks faster than the ships it depicts. With Pearl Harbor still smoldering in our rearview mirror, let's traverse across the Atlantic and travel back in time to the blood-soaked moors of 13th century Scotland. Prepare yourselves, folks, because our number 2 pick is none other than the heart-stirring, kilt-clad epic, Braveheart, 1995. Directed by and starring Mel Gibson, This film has long been a favorite for its passionate representation of the fight for Scottish independence. Yet, when it comes to historical accuracy, Braveheart wears its inaccuracies like a badge of honor. For starters, the famous blue war paint worn by William Wallace and his men, that's pure Hollywood. The Scots of this era didn't wear war paint into battle. And then there's the matter of kilts. The film would have you believe that every man was running around the Highlands in a tartan kilt, but this form of dress didn't become common in Scotland until the 16th century, around 300 years after Wallace's time. The love story between Wallace and Princess Isabella of France also raises eyebrows, considering that Isabella would have been about 10 years old at the time of Wallace's execution and was living in France, not England. Moreover, Wallace's place in history as an underdog battling the English overlords is a bit generous. In reality, he was part of the noble class and had as much, if not more, power and wealth than many of his English counterparts. So while Braveheart might stir your soul with its gripping tale of defiance and freedom, it might just leave historians shaking their heads in disbelief. As the echoes of William Wallace's infamous cry for freedom fade into the misty highlands, we trade in our battle axe for a life vest and set sail on the icy waters of the North Atlantic. Hold on to your hats and hearts, folks, because we've finally reached our #1 pick. Get ready to board the grandest ship of them all, the unsinkable Titanic, 1997. This blockbuster epic from James Cameron became legendary for its stunning visuals and heart-wrenching love story, yet when it comes to historical accuracy, it hits more than a few icebergs. Firstly, the movie's star-crossed lovers, Jack and Rose, are completely fictional. No records exist of anyone by these names aboard the ill-fated vessel. While their tale adds a human element to the tragedy, it's purely a creation of Hollywood. The movie also offers a somewhat distorted view of the ship's passengers. The upper class are almost universally portrayed as pompous and uncaring, while the lower class passengers are shown as noble and kind-hearted, a gross oversimplification of the class dynamics of the era. Perhaps the biggest inaccuracy, however, relates to the sinking itself. In the film, the Titanic seems to sink slowly after hitting the iceberg, allowing for plenty of dramatic moments. In reality, the ship sank in a mere 2 hours and 40 minutes, leaving little time for drawn-out goodbyes. So while Titanic may tug at our heartstrings with its tragic love story, it's best not to take it as a history lesson. And that concludes our list of 10 movies that screwed up the facts. And that's a wrap for today. We really hope you had a blast watching this video. If you did, don't forget to show us some love by smashing that like button, hitting subscribe, and leaving us a comment down below. Your support means the world to us. Thanks a million for tuning in, and we can't wait to catch you in the next one. Stay awesome.